Hey everybody, welcome to The Point. I'm your host, Noah Warren. Hope you're all doing well today. We're here on a Thursday. Lots to dive into. Gonna talk about a number of different things NHL-wise. If interesting goalie conundrum across the NHL. Gonna chat about some trade targets and just some teams that should look at trading some pieces and getting value now. Holding on to them doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me when teams are struggling and you know they're gonna bottom out. It's inevitable. It's going to happen. I'm gonna touch on that today. Just teams that should be shopping players, quite frankly, that should look to trade some pieces and get what they can now and commit to a rebuild. These teams that just stay in the middle, that don't make a decision, they're the worst kind of teams because they just stay there. They stay in the middle. They're bad, but not bad enough. You need a lot of help in the lottery, and it banks on one pick for you to try to even get somewhat close to being better. It never works. So I'm going to touch on that today. Talk about Matt Dumba. A number of NFL stories, including a couple of quarterbacks that look like they're going to be out this coming weekend, Super Wildcard weekend. And Walker Campbell will join me tomorrow afternoon, and we're going to get into a number of NFL topics, including every line from every game. We're going to talk about some props, things of that nature. And there's a lot of unknown right now in the National Football League when it comes to where guys are going to end up and what's going to happen with certain players. I really don't know at this point. So what I do know is that Skylar Thompson is going to be starting for the Dolphins this weekend, and that might be Anthony Brown starting for the Baltimore Ravens. Doesn't bode well. We'll get into those lines some more, but I will touch on the injuries and different notes from around the NFL world today. But I wanted to start with the Toronto Maple Leafs game last night where they played the Nashville Predators. If you missed the game, you didn't miss much. This was a very, it's a 2-point night for Toronto. I'm not going to talk much about the game when it comes to strategy or when it comes to play, because quite frankly, neither team played that well. The officiating was quite terrible, if you ask my opinion. They were calling cross-checks that were not cross-checks. It was a blasé game, and if you were on a Wednesday night and you had any other plans, it was likely better than watching this game. Unfortunately, I watched it. But what I did come out of it, and what has been a key part of this season for the Toronto Maple Leafs, to me, has been obviously Mitch Marner's point streak. Mitch Marner gets a lot of the accolades in Toronto for having a great season, which are well-deserved. He's a great player. He's a go-to winger. He was once a hated Maple Leaf for his contract status. He's worth the money that he's paid now. Good for him for holding out. I have nothing against him on that front. Any Leaf fan that does, live with it. The most interesting part for me this year for the Toronto Maple Leafs has been the growth, the development, and just overall switch in philosophy and game from William Nylander. William Nylander, when he first started his career, was always a good player, but he was a bit of a one-trick pony. He was a guy that had a great wrist shot. He could be creative on the power play, but his game of chasing around loose pucks, going into a corner, any kind of battle was irrelevant. He was a one-trick pony. He was a guy in a line that you needed somebody to put him on the wing next to him that would go fight for the puck, because quite frankly, he wouldn't do it. Now, in the metamorphosis of the NHL, there are constantly things changing. It's not a physical game anymore. There are games where you watch a whole 60 minutes and you don't see a check. It's very easy to get through the neutral zone in the regular season. The game has changed. But some things have remained the same. And that's, if you have skill, you'll likely win. And what I also think is something that is changing a little bit is that William Nylander has been in the league a long time. And I've seen a metamorphosis in his game. And my takeaway from this is it doesn't matter what year you're in. It doesn't matter how old you are. You can always improve. I think as human beings, athletes, doesn't matter, as people, we think we're fully formed at certain ages. At 25, I'm going to be like this for the rest of my life. I'm going to have this personality. This is my way of thinking, and nobody can block me off of it. And I think a lot of that comes from political views and just, beliefs and the different way our culture looks at everything, where you have to be this way. And once you made that stand, you can't go back across the bridge, because then you're a hypocrite, or then you're siding with the enemy. And it's a really short-sighted, and it's a stupid way of thinking, because we're always trying to learn in life. We're always trying to get better. Or if you're not, then you're not living life the right way, in my opinion. If you just have one stance, if you just have one viewpoint, your life is very minimal. You're in this small box. You can't you can't go here. You're just here. You're like a mime. You're stuck in a box, and you don't know from one day to the next, you know what your life is. It's very mundane. It's very boring. I look at Bill Nylander as a guy that I know what he's going to be for the rest of his career. There will be nights he will be the best player for the Toronto Maple Leafs. And there will be nights where every Leaf fan wants to wring his neck because he doesn't go into a corner, because he doesn't score, because he doesn't back check, yada, yada, yada. You get my point here. This season, William Nylander may not be the guy going into the corner to finish a check. He may not be the guy hitting a guy open ice, but I've seen a player that gives a shit in his own zone. I've seen a player that when he loses a puck in a battle, he will strip it back. He will get a steal. He'll put himself in good opportunities. He'll get to the front of the net. He is showing people that he has more to his game than just the flash and the dash. And quite honestly, it's refreshing. He's played really well this year. And Mitch Marner's been a great story. To me, the MVP of the first half of the Toronto Maple Leafs season is Bill Nylander. To me, he's been their most consistent player. He has been on a line with Austin Matthews for majority of the season, and he's been the better player on that line. He's been more consistent. I see a guy that hunts for pucks. I see a guy that's finishing when he gets scoring opportunities. Austin Matthews is a better player than Bill Nylander. I'm not making that opinion. But what I'm saying, this season, in the micro view, Bill has been the better guy. Bill has been the go-to player. He's been clutch, while 34 has just been there. And I think this gives hope to a lot of players, and I think this should show people this doesn't mean this is just who you are. We see this with, and I'll look at Cole Caulfield in Montreal. He's young, very good player, very good player. But I think he's on a William Nylander career arc. Really good shot, good vision, pretty smooth skater, thin frame, doesn't have a good hair, but similar arc, similar type player. Cole Caulfield in his own zone couldn't care less. He doesn't back check. He doesn't think about defensive responsibilities. And Montreal suffers for it. Yeah, their team sucks as well, and their goaltending is one of the worst tandems in the NHL. But it doesn't help that you have a bad defense, you have bad goaltending, and then you have a star player that doesn't give a shit about helping. It's not going to translate into wins. It's not going to help you. It's 5-on-5 on the ice. When you don't have a player that's willing to put in the effort on the other end, that means it's 5-on-4 every shift. And when you got Jonathan Drouin, who won't get any better because he's the person I'm talking about from the jump that is living in that tiny box that just thinks he knows what he is, and he's not willing to put in the work, not willing to look past the small box, not willing to see the forest from the trees. He just is in that little space. Bill Nylander should be an example for a lot of players. I thought I knew what he was for the rest of his career. He has been different this season. And being a different player does not always say, oh, he just got 80 points. He didn't get 60. He's a better player now. That's a small person's view. Points are great, but points aren't as important if you're not winning. Think about this. Austin Matthews only has 20 goals. 20 goals at this point, it's great, but it's only 20. Travis Konecny, who I'm going to talk about later, has 24. Travis Konecny is a good player. He's got 24. His team, they got like 14 wins. Oof. Maple Leafs don't have 14 losses. Maple Leafs win every night. Why? Well, they play pretty good team defense. They did last year. I think it's better this year. It's their goaltending was as good as it was last year, but it's also Bill Nylander caring. It's also about him looking at his line and saying, you know what? Austin Matthews was the MVP of the league last year. He was the best player in the world last year for one season. It's not better than McDavid, but he was better for one season. He went back for pucks. He improved his game defensively. He's a superstar. I'm not going to be better than him, but I'm damn sure not that bad. What if I improved my defensive play and also boosted my points? What a concept. But it takes effort. It takes dedication. It takes perseverance to actually do it. In life, when you got a task, going to buy a jug of milk isn't a tough task. Get in the car, go there, walk in the 7-Eleven, open up the thing, go to the counter, pay for your milk. Done. That's a small task, not hard to do. You want to run a marathon, you want to lose weight, that's a tougher task. Believe me, I know. Gone through it in life. Still trying to cut more weight because I'm obsessed with it. But that's, again, you fixate on certain things. Some tasks are tougher than others. It's really easy to just score 25 to 30 goals a year, get your cookies, get 70, 80 points, be in Nick Ehlers' range, and your next contract, you'll get $7-8 million. Pretty good life. But are you going to win? Well, let's see. Check the survey. Maple Leafs have won how many rounds since Bill Nylander's been on the team? Oh, yeah, none. To me, that it took him looking in the mirror, pardon me, and seeing Marner plays the penalty kill. Austin Matthews plays better in his own zone, and he just won the Hart Trophy. So I got one superstar, one fringe superstar on my team. I might be the next best player because I know I'm better than 91. You might not say that in the locker room, but I think 88 thinks he's better than 91. That's John Tavares if you're not following the numbers. I think he thinks he's better than Tavares. He is better than Tavares. But you want to prove it. You want to have that tangible value. How will we help the team win? How will we win a couple of rounds? Wouldn't that be fun? Give credit where credit's due. He's playing at his best level. Mitch Marner scored the game-winning goal last night. He does a big celebration with an empty net. Way to go. Hot dog celebration. It's about the pass. It's about Bill Nylander seeing him wide the hell open so he can throw it in the empty net so that he can go down the ice, looking at the stands at the library at the Scotiabank Arena. It was the creativity. It was the vision that made that goal happen. He's been the straw that stirs the drink in Toronto. And this All-Star game, I'm not the expert in All-Star games. When Seamus is on next week, we'll talk about the All-Star game because he's more into that than me. I hate it. I'm like John Tortorella. I'm not watching that weekend. I don't care about the skills competition. I could give a shit about the game, 3-on-3, who's coaching. I don't care at all. I do know that Mitch Marner was voted in as the least representative because for some reason the NHL has to have a representative from every team, which is beyond fucking stupid. Another reason why it's not an all-star game. It's a pick a player. It's basically just pick from each team one player. Doesn't mean you're an all-star. Every team has to have a representative. Not every team has an all-star. Tell me Columbus has a fucking all-star? They stink. Chicago doesn't have an all-star to this team. Patrick Kane's been terrible. Who else? Philly? Okay. They're sending Kevin Hayes. It's a great story. Yeah, we know about his brother tragically passing away. But is he going because of his players? Is he going because it's a good story because his brother passed away? Might sound cynical, or it might just be the correct answer. Let me know on that one. But nevertheless, I'll ask Seamus next week. The fans vote in the rest of the players. It's a fan vote for the fill out the rest of this all-star crew. Is Matthews going to get voted in or Nylander? Because if it was a fan vote based on just purely deserving it, Nylander would be going. Not 34. Maybe all three of them will go. But I can't see three teams having three representatives, but I don't know. Again, this all-star game. But I think Bill deserves his credit. I think he deserves his flowers. And I haven't heard enough of it from a market that gets more coverage than the rest of the league combined. I don't think that's an exaggeration either. I will say that another player for the Maple Leafs that I like is Calle Jarnkrok. He's impressing me. He's playing with Tavares and Marner right now. Was an offseason signing. Formerly of Nashville. Went to Calgary at the deadline. To me, he's perfect on the third line. He's playing on the second line right now. In a perfect world, Toronto will get another winger before the trade deadline. They will get a top six winger so that Jarnkrok can play in the third line. It adds more depth. It adds more opportunity for you. It just spreads out your best players. Toronto basically knows who they're playing. Unless Boston capsizes, which they haven't all year, they're going to be playing Tampa Bay. You're going to need players in every line to match up with Colton. Match up with Hagel. Match up with Maroon. The depth pieces in Tampa. Match up with Nick Paul, Mr. Game 7. They don't have enough depth for that yet, in my opinion. Because they can finish at home ice against Tampa. They had it last year. Didn't win the game. Didn't win the series. They need another top six winger. And Kyle Dubas, I don't think is going to be afraid to trade prospects anybody. You know why? This is it. You lose in the first round again, you're unemployed. You get a pink slip. Go back to the Sioux. Because I don't think another NHL team is going to hire him right away. Could be wrong about that, but I don't think so. A guy that was so committed to one style of winning, and if it doesn't work, doesn't sound like a guy that's really moldable. Doesn't sound like a guy that's willing to hear other people's in the room's ideas. Not exactly a great person to have as your leader, as your leader of your franchise. But Jarnkrok would be great. Another top six winger that could work for the Toronto Maple Leafs. And this player could work around the league. I like him a lot. It's Travis Konecny. And here's my thinking. Travis Konecny, last night I was watching a bit of the Flyers-Caps game. It's a slow Wednesday night in the Noah Warren household. Travis Konecny is 25 years old. He has 2 years remaining after this one at $5.5 million. 24 goals this season. I like the player a lot. He is one of the more frustrating players in the NHL because he will take stupid penalties. He's not always engaged. But in 2022, 2023, he has been. He has bite. He's a smaller player, but isn't afraid to play physical. Travis Konecny is not like adding a big, strong winger. I get that, but he's not easy to move off the puck. He will not be afraid to go into a corner with a Tom Wilson, with a Ross Colton, with a Patrick Maroon, you name it. He's a fearless player. The biggest worry you have about Travis Konecny is he will go into that corner, give somebody a cross check in the face, and give that team a power play. But the best he can do is be a 40-goal scorer this year, which he's got 24 already. He will be, and he's playing for a brutal team. Will fight for you, will be a good power play contributor, and can play in your top six. For teams that want to acquire him, you would get 3 playoff runs with Travis Konecny. So here's the logic just for Toronto, just to frame it. Toronto has 2 more playoff runs with Austin Matthews. That's what we know so far. He's not re-signed. He may this summer, and then you have a lot longer with Austin Matthews. But what we know right now, Austin Matthews has this season and next season as a Toronto Maple Leaf. Bill Nylander has this season and next season with the Toronto Maple Leafs. Mitch Marner has 3 seasons left on his contract with the Toronto Maple Leafs, 2 after this one. So you have your window. Riley's locked up, other players, but this is the players that matter. I think Tavares has got 2 years left as well. So that's where you stand. So what do you do with that information? Well, you get 3 kicks at the can with this player. You got your 2 years with Matthews. You'll be competing. You'll make the playoffs. Hopefully you win a cup. That's all great. But you get him for the next 2 years. And then in that third year, you could flip him if Matthews leaves, if your franchise is in a different place. You could flip him at the next deadline as a rental. He'd only be 27 years old. Still have a lot of value. So you recruit assets. You do what you can to try to build your franchise back up just in case 34 leaves your team. Again, it's not set in stone. I'm just pontificating here. So you'd have an asset to win for the next two years, and you'd have an asset to potentially sell the year after. It's a win-win. Not to mention, Jake Muzzin makes $5.85 million. I think we're going to hear in February that Jake Muzzin is never going to play hockey again. Meaning his $5.85 million will go on long-term injured reserve. And that money will be free for the Toronto Maple Leafs to use. They can use it on anybody. Meaning they could trade for Travis Konecny. He could come in and replace that money. And you still have money to spare. You can still play around. Try to add to your defense core if you think you still need help. You have Sandin and Liljegren. And you like Timmins and you like Jordy Ben. But you still might want another defenseman back there, which I don't think is a bad idea at all. You could still pull off a Chychrun blockbuster trade if you really wanted to. Toronto doesn't have all kinds of assets, but they do have a first-round pick this year. They do have Nick Robertson. Teams might want him. Matthew Nyes. Trade Matthew Nyes before he starts fucking playing. Because then, if he is a bust, teams don't know that yet. Trade him before he gets on the ice. You do have things that you can trade in Toronto that I think teams would want. I mean, I wouldn't want Kerfoot ever, but teams probably would. He's a rental. You get rid of him, play him for the rest of the year, then he's gone. Nyes, Robertson, maybe Alex Steves, who they got in the American Hockey League. Joseph Wall, maybe a net-minding prospect that teams would inquire on. Maybe you can't make both moves happen. But I think it's more important for them to get a top 6 winger than it is to get another defenseman, because I don't think they're going to be able to land a top 4D. I think it's going to be tough. They don't need a John Klingberg, who will probably be sold for pennies on the dollar. They don't need that player. He's not going to do much for that team. Is Florida? I've heard reports Florida's going to trade Brandon Montour. I don't buy it. Florida might not be good this season. They might miss the playoffs. I'm not getting rid of Brandon Montour. He's too valuable. He's a really good defenseman unless the trade is through the roof, and Toronto can't do that Montour trade. I think they could do the Konecny deal. You get 3 postseasons with this player. If I'm the Winnipeg Jets, I'm aggressive. Why not? I think the Winnipeg Jets are a good team. I think they could use some more depth as well. You're relying on Jansen Harkins and Sam Gagner and Samu Manalainen and just forwards that you've never heard of, David Gustafsson. Get another player in there that's got some bite, that can play, and he would fit into the mold of that team. Scheifele's a crusty guy. Blake Wheeler's crusty. This team is full of guys that just kind of play with an edge, play a little pissed off. I think Konecny would fit in Winnipeg. I think Konecny would fit in Edmonton. Now they're going to have Evander Kane returning, but I still think they need another high-end player. Now, dollars in, dollar out. Edmonton needs to improve the defense score too, but that's a whole other discussion. Calgary? They might look at Konecny. There's teams that are just kind of looking around. Colorado could inquire. If I'm Philly, to really commit to a rebuild, you have to trade good players too. Because if you're just trading your crap, contracts, you have to hang on to money for some of them, you're not getting anything in return. You want to get these contracts off the books. JVR, got to go. Perfect World Kevin Hayes, nobody's taking that, but Perfect World Kevin Hayes, got to go. Konechny's having a great season. Trade him while his value is high. Ivan Provorov, I think you can get a lot for him. I think the lease will be on him too. Maybe the lease will decide to go for defense and not Konechny. The Oilers, I think, will call on Provorov. But you need to trade the good players also, because to really commit to a rebuild, you have to be bad. Be Anaheim. I watched the first period and a half of the Anaheim-Edmonton game last night, and Anaheim is truly dreadful. Poor John Gibson has completely lost all his confidence. He looks like a guy that he's the puppy who lost his way. If you ever seen Billy Madison, you know the reference. He is just out there, no help. He's on an island. It looks so upsetting watching John Gibson play in the net. Because he knows he's playing for a bunch of crap in front of him that doesn't even bother to try to help. But I like Travis Konecny. He's a flight risk for sure. Because you don't know what you're going to get all the time. If he was in court, he would be a flight risk. He would not be able to receive bail. They keep him in jail because they'd worry that he might be in San Juan in a week. But you like a guy that plays with edge. You like a guy that you don't need to motivate. He's having a great season playing for a team that has no shot of making the playoffs. That has no shot at competing for a Stanley Cup before the season started. I think Konechny's an Ontario guy. Get him back in that area. You put him on a line with Tavares and Marner. I like it. You have Bunting, Matthews, and Nylander on one line. Konechny, Tavares, and Marner on the other. Not too shabby. Then you have your depth players with Kampf. Maybe you're able to replace Kerfoot and add something. You have Pontus Holmberg, who I like. If you keep Kerfoot, fine. And you have Calle Jarnkrok on a third line. That's a checking line, but he's also he has more confidence offensively. He'll be able to produce more down there, I believe. Slotting Kampf as your fourth line center. Perfect role for him. Penalty kill, block shots, defensive zone, win a draw. This team can go a lot of different ways. I don't think center ice is necessarily paramount. Because I like Holmberg quite a bit. I think he knows his role, and I think he does it effectively. You don't need to tell David Kampf what he needs to do on the ice. He's a perfect glue guy. He knew what he was in Chicago. He knows what he is in Toronto. He's there. He blocks. He gets in the lanes. He's smart. He doesn't need to be coddled. So if I'm the Toronto Maple Leafs, I look at a Travis Konecny deal. I think it can happen. They don't have all kinds of great assets, but I think they have enough. I think they have enough to get the deal done. And if you have to give up something that Philly likes to really win, then you do it. If that means you have to trade Liljegren or Sandin, so be it. You have to pay both guys at some point, and you're not going to be able to afford both of them. So move off it before something happens. That's why you have Timmins. That's why you have Jordy Ben. The depth. Just some food for thought. For the past 5 years, it seems, Matt Dumba's name has been in the rumor mill. I heard this week the Edmonton Oilers and Ottawa Senators are interested in Matt Dumba. Okay. Yeah, I get that. We've heard it, like I said, for 5 seasons. If you're not familiar with the Minnesota Wild, I'll refresh you. They have this kid named Kirill Kaprizov's pretty good player. Had 100 points last year. Matt Zuccarello, ageless wonder down there. Marc-Andre Fleury's 37, still the best Canadian goaltender in the world because our goaltending stinks. They got Jacob Middleton on the back end. They're a really tough physical team with Joel Eriksson Ek and one of my favorites, Marcus Foligno, Ryan Reeves, Jordan Greenway. They're a physical group. An interesting calamity of players down in Minnesota. And you got Jared Spurgeon, their captain on the back end, who's a very good defenseman. Matt Dumba. Matt Dumba is a player with a big shot. He's not afraid to engage physically despite being smaller in stature. But Matt Dumba's been like it's been reported, a highly touted man for a long time. On Tuesday night, I watched Minnesota play the New York Rangers. The Rangers won the game in the gimmick, but it was very close. Both teams were relatively even. You had Kaprizov versus Zibanejad in the game. Zibanejad being the best Ranger player. Kaprizov being the best player for the Minnesota Wild. Igor Shesterkin against Marc-Andre Fleury. Both men played very well. And in the end, Mr. Skill, no substance, Artemi Panarin gets the gimmick winner. I think Minnesota deserved to win the game, but it gets to the gimmick. You never know what's going to happen. Bigger deal here. Minnesota is currently in second place in the Central Division. They're in a dogfight with Winnipeg, with Dallas. St. Louis is still alive somehow. The Colorado Avalanche are trying to find a pulse despite their slow start, and the Nashville Predators are somewhat lingering. The Central's wide open with half a season left to play. But from what I've seen so far, the Dallas Stars are going to make the playoffs. The Winnipeg Jets are going to make the playoffs. And out of the teams I just said, based on play this year, the Minnesota Wild are going to make the playoffs as well. So for all the Matt Dumba chat, who will be an unrestricted free agent at the end of the year, I don't think it's going to materialize because I don't see Minnesota trading the player unless they can get an unless it's a hockey trade, I don't think they're going to do it. Because Minnesota has Kaprizov, they have Zuccarello at the tail end of his career, they have Spurgeon. They have a team that I don't think can win a cup, but that can compete. Bill Guerin, I don't think wants to sell. I think he looks at his position, and the Central does not have a clear, defined number one. This isn't Colorado of last year yet anyway. Like I said, Dallas has been very good. Jason Robertson's got 29 goals. Little Joe Pavelski continues to deliver. Roope Hintz is a star player. Miro Heiskanen. Jake Ottinger's a great goalie in net. Pete DeBoer's only had success as a first-year head coach in the NHL. But despite all that being said, Minnesota can hang with Dallas. Minnesota can hang with Winnipeg. They've beaten them twice this season. Minnesota can hang with Colorado so far. McKinnon's constantly injured. They got inconsistencies in net. Mikko Rantanen's been fantastic, but he doesn't have any help. Nashville should be tanking, yet they still continue to hang around. They got an old team. They have no dynamic forwards whatsoever. I watched them last night. It's like watching paint dry, the Nashville Predators. But to me, Minnesota will not be trading Matt Dumba unless they get something in return, so I don't view this as a real story. These rumors, I don't take much to them. Because I hear Ottawa and Edmonton from Darren Dreger. Okay. Ottawa does need defense. They need 3 or 4 of them. What are they trading for Matt Dumba? Well, it'd be a sign and trade, likely, because they don't want to trade for a rental, miss the playoffs, and then lose him in free agency. That doesn't make a whole lot of sense. So they have to sign and trade with Matt Dumba before, so that's a lot of different positioning, and he'd have to agree to stay there, which I'm not sure he would. What's going back? Is Alex DeBrincat going to Minnesota? You're not going to trade Tim Stützle. You're not trading Drake Batherson, are you? Is Shane Pinto the deal? Is that what's going back? Youngster Minnesota would like to take a chance on. He's cheap. Shane Pinto and a draft pick? Not Josh Norris. He signed 8 times 8. Minnesota can't afford that. They got all that dead cap from Parise and Ryan Suter. So it has to be a hockey trade because it's money in, money out. But I don't see who Minnesota would move. I don't see who Ottawa would move. In the case of Edmonton, let's see. You're not trading McDavid. You're not trading Draisaitl. You're not going to trade one of your defensemen because you want to improve the position, not just weaken it, right? So you're not trading Tyson Barrie in the deal, I don't think. You're not going to trade Evan Bouchard. They think he's the next prodigy. I mean, you'd love to trade Brett Kulak, but Minnesota's not that stupid. What forwards does Edmonton have of value? You trade Nuge? He's already got 20 goals in the year. He's playing pretty well. I don't think so. You trading Ryan Fogle? Warren Fogle? No. Nobody wants him. Ryan McLeod? It's got to be a big package if Ryan McLeod's going to be the center of it to go back to Minnesota. I mean, Jesse Puljujarvi. Let's just stop that now. Jesse Puljujarvi is an irrelevant player. He brings nothing to the table. He doesn't work hard. He doesn't get to the net. He doesn't have a good shot. He doesn't have a good work ethic. Jesse Puljujarvi is just there. He's on the Edmonton Oilers roster just because. It's unfortunate for them because he doesn't do anything to help them win. But Minnesota doesn't want him. So who's coming back? Trading Jack Campbell's 5x5 to Minnesota? They're good. Trading Stuart Skinner? Nah, you need him. You need a goalie to try to win, right? So I don't see a deal. Trading Dylan Holloway? Your first round pick that you're trying to develop, who's now playing with Connor McDavid? Trading him? Him and Yamamoto for Dumba, straight up? Doesn't sound like a real good deal for Edmonton right away. I tell you. Might look good in the short term, might not look so great in the long term. I think this is another year you'll hear a lot about Matt Dumba and rumors. I don't think he's going anywhere. Unless there's a hockey trade. He is not going to be departing Minnesota because why? They're in contention to compete for the Stanley Cup. They might be a long shot team. They might fall apart in the second half. But I watched them play the other night. I don't love the way their team's built, quite frankly. And they got too many burly forwards. They got too many guys that just love to hit and get out of position than actually play. Play the way the game's played right now. And I like the physical game. But the trade for Ryan Reeves made no sense for me from Minnesota. You already got a bunch of Ryan Reeves that are actually better than Ryan Reeves. They could use an implement of skill on that team, quite frankly. Because they're a team that has Kaprizov, Zuccarello, And then their back end is their next strength. Kalen Addison's had a really good rookie year. You got Dumba. You got Spurgeon. Jonas Brodin is as solid as it gets. What now? Matthew Boldy, who I like a lot. This will be another year. I think you hear a lot about Matt Dumba. Deadline day, he'll be talked about. Minnesota shopping him. I think he remains a Minnesota Wild through the deadline. He will be their own rental because he will not be back with the team next year because, quite frankly, they can't afford him with their dead cap. But I don't see him moving because I just don't think there's a place to move him that makes sense. In a trade that would make ultimate sense with Minnesota. If I'm Minnesota, you want to trade me Alex DeBrincat? Sure. Then I'll do it. Then I will do the deal with you. You can have Matt Dumba. You can have a defenseman for the next 5 years. I can have DeBrincat. Sure. That's the proposition. A 1-for-1. I don't think it's that crazy. Do I think Ottawa will do it? No. But do I think they should consider it? Yes. Because you have Josh Norris will return. Shane Pinto's a good player. You have Drake Batherson. You have Tim Stützle. Who do you got in the back end? Zaitsev. You like Shabbat. You like Artem Zub. Who do you like after that? Is Eric Brandstrom worked out? Is he developed? Doesn't look like he's an NHL player to me. Doesn't look like he's going to stick around in Ottawa long term. He's been there long enough. Who's going to play defense? Who can make a play on that back end? I like Jake Sanderson. He's playing as a youngster. I'm fine with that. He needs to continue to get better next year. But if you had Shabbat and Artem Zub, and you had Sanderson, you had Dumba, you have a top four. Might not be the best top four in the league, but you have a top four. You don't have that. You don't even have close to that right now. Then you start to build out from there, adding more defensive players to this roster. Maybe you find another four that you need to replace DeBrincat, because for a team like Ottawa to land a big defenseman, you're likely going to have to overpay. Because think about it. They got Giroux because Giroux's from Ottawa. He came home because he wanted to return to Ottawa, not because they paid a whole lot of money for him or it was an attractive landing spot. They traded for DeBrincat. They drafted Norris. They drafted Tkachuk. They drafted Shabbat. Gave them all long-term extensions. There aren't major free agents that are saying, let me go to Ottawa. There aren't a lot of free agents, period, that want to go to Canadian teams. They're all going to the United States. And COVID's over. You can't blame COVID anymore for why people don't want to play in Canada. Maybe it's because nobody likes Trudeau. They're finally starting to see the light of day. This guy sucks. Maybe that's why. I don't know. But to make that happen, you're going to need a sign and trade, or you're going to need to overpay for a player. An Ottawa Senators team that may have new ownership by then. I don't know what these new owners are going to be like. Are they going to be willing to spend? Are they going to be willing to lose money on an Ottawa Senators team? Eugene Melnyk wasn't willing to overspend. He'd overspend when you thought you had a chance to win. Is Ottawa going to feel they have a chance to win next season with still Toronto in their division? Still Boston? If you're banking on Tampa going anywhere, so good luck with that bet. Detroit's getting better. Buffalo's better than Ottawa right now. And they don't even have a goalie. Ottawa thought they had two goalies that were better than anybody Buffalo had in the roster. Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen looks like their future in net. So what now? I don't know. Pardon me while I have a drink here, but this isn't. I just don't see an avenue for that deal, and why Minnesota would want to trade a player that has value for them. Because he does right now. He brings value to that team. Carolina Hurricanes. Carolina Hurricanes are in an interesting position right now. They are first in the Metropolitan Division. They're a very good team. They have one of the strongest back ends in all of the National Hockey League. With Slavin and Pesce and Brady Shea. I like their team. But they got New Jersey right behind them. But they do have Rob Brendamore, and I trust the team to make the playoffs. But they got news yesterday when it was announced that Frederik Andersen was activated off of injured reserve. He'd been on IR since November 6th, so over a 2-month stint on it. And he may return tonight against the Columbus Blue Jackets. Perfect team to return against. While Andersen has been MIA, Porchkov, their new rookie goaltender, had been called up. He got an extension. He's playing fantastic. And to me, he's their new number one goalie. He's in the Rookie of the Year conversation with Matty Beniers of the Seattle Kraken. He's righted the ship, and he's kept them afloat while Andersen has been MIA. What the predicament here is not that who's the new starter. The new starter is not Frederik Andersen because he'll be injured before the playoffs, or he'll quit, or he'll do something that just makes you want to shake your head. Because he's done it in Toronto, he's done it in Carolina. I don't trust the guy as far as I can throw him. What I'm interested in here is you have Frederik Andersen, you have Porchkov, and you have Antti Ranta, who is still on this roster. Antti Ranta is a very good backup. He was their starter in the playoffs last year because Frederik Andersen was hurt, or whatever was wrong with him. And he did an adequate job. They lost in Game 7 of the second round to the New York Rangers. But looking at the situation, Andersen requires waivers to be sent to the American League. I don't think he'd be claimed if you send him down, but I don't think they'll do that. Porchkov can go to the minors without waivers, but he's your starting goaltender. He's your best goalie right now. You're not sending him back down to Charlotte. And then you have Antti Ranta, who's also on a one-way deal, meaning he'd have to pass through waivers to be sent down. So there's risks to all of this. What I think Carolina will do, because I believe I know Rob Brendamore, he is going to keep all three goalies on the roster. You can only have so many roster spots, but he'll send a forward down or defense, have less players, and have the extra goalie in the NHL. Because of the Frederik Andersen worry, because he doesn't want to lose Antti Ranta for nothing, you send him down through waivers. I think he's going to be claimed. Personally, I think he'll be claimed. A bad team will take him. I could see the Montreal Canadiens putting in a claim on Antti Ranta. They're without Jake Allen. Could be for the rest of the year. Ranta could have some starts. You'll claim him. He could be a player you trade at the trade deadline so you have more depth in net. Or a team that's vying for the Stanley Cup may just claim him. And what happens is Antti Ranta could be claimed off waivers. And when you're claimed off waivers, once you're claimed, you can be sent to the American League without passing through waivers again once the team has you. So, for instance, he's playing. The New Jersey Devils see nobody's claimed him yet. They may just claim him. They can put him in the American League, and then he's there. He's their property. He's playing in the American League. They have Mackenzie Blackwood. They have Vitek Vanacek. But in the case of an injury, they can bring Antti Ranta up. They can shop him at the trade deadline. They hurt their opponent, and they also add to their organization. They get a draft pick. They get some depth. They get the satisfaction of screwing with Carolina, however you want to frame it. If I'm Carolina, I do try to shop him in the next couple of days because you do want to make that decision. But I keep him in the National Hockey League. I continue to let him practice with the team. Your two starters may have maintenance days, so Antti Ranta will get practice time. And in a perfect world, maybe he gets a start every now and then. You have a 3-goalie system. Ranta can get a start every now and then. He is an NHL goaltender. But they got 3 of them right now. They got 2 Frederik Andersen, when healthy, is a great starter. He could have been a Vezina Trophy winner last year, but he's not reliable. Porchkov has proven to be a starting goaltender in the NHL. but he's extremely young, and he doesn't know what he doesn't know. He's never played in a playoff game, so there's some concern there. Antti Ranta, he's a backup. He's a 2. He's not a starter. He's not going to push to be a starter. He's been in the league. He's in his 30s. He knows what he is. But that's a perfect spot for Carolina. He's a perfect Rob Brendamore guy because he's a team person. He will just sit there, do his job, make the saves, go to practice, and be the perfect soldier. And I think that's very appetizing for a coach that's very meat and potatoes, that's very structure-esque. Do this for me. Do this for me. I'll help you. If we see an Antti Ranta waiver wire, I think there's a 0% chance he does not get claimed by another team. But at the same time, I watched Carolina, New Jersey the other night. It was an important game. Carolina had control of the game. They're so big, and they just grind you down every time they play you. But New Jersey battled back. They scored 2 goals in 18 seconds to finish the second period, and Dawson Mercer ended up with the game-winning goal in the third. They had lost their first 2 games of the season to New Jersey, to Carolina, and they got some revenge. They're now only 2 points back of Carolina in the standings. I heard all the time, right around Christmas, New Jersey's falling off a cliff. New Jersey's not going to make the playoffs. New Jersey just isn't that good. Enough. They beat Pittsburgh. They beat Carolina. They just go in there and do their business. Jack Hughes is having a career year. Vitek Vanacek's having a career year. He's been a fantastic ad from Washington. He's been their best goalie. He's pushed Mackenzie Blackwood out, and it's not really a tandem anymore. It's Vitek Vanacek's net. He's the starter. He's the go-to guy. They could still use some physicality in that lineup, certainly. But they're wicked fast. They got one of the most dependable defensemen in all the league in Jonas Siegenthaler, who might only have 3 points, but he does his job as good as anybody. He blocks shots. He's in the right area. He gets sticks on pucks. He's been a fantastic ad for dirt cheap. Lindy Ruff's coached the team extremely well with a bunch of youngsters. Nico Hischier career year. Jack Hughes career year. Dawson Mercer continues to play extremely well. But no, the sky was falling for the New Jersey Devils. No, it's not. They just went through a speed bump. But when you don't like certain players, you dump on them. You dump on them because you don't want them to succeed. Because they're a small market. They're New Jersey. Ugh. Well, New Jersey continues to find ways to win. New Jersey's ahead of Pittsburgh. New Jersey's ahead of the Rangers. They're ahead of Washington. I look forward to watching that race because the Metro is still wide open. Pittsburgh winning on Tuesday night was their biggest win of the season for me. They were down 3-0 to Vancouver in the first period. Mike Sullivan pulled the goalie, and Casey DeSmith was pulled. Tristan Jarry's injured. He brought in Dustin Tokarski, who is a former first-round pick but is now an American League journeyman. He came in. He didn't allow a goal. It was rock solid for Pittsburgh. They win the game 5-3. Another blown lead from the Vancouver Canucks. But to me, it was a turning point game for Pittsburgh to say, you know what? It's January. Enough of this. They were terrible after the Christmas break. They've been really behind the play. They haven't looked great. Evgeny Malkin had 4 points. To his credit, I didn't think he'd be this good. He's played extremely, extremely well. And I give him credit for that. He's looked extremely good. I'm going to save the NFL for tomorrow, folks. My voice is starting to peter a bit, and throat is tender today. I'll tell you that. So I apologize for the abbreviated show, but I'm battling through it today because the voice is not feeling great in the back of the throat. But I will be back tomorrow. It's Friday tomorrow. Walker will join me. Lots of NFL talk. So have a good rest of your Thursday. Hope you enjoyed the NHL thoughts today. Voice will be better. Throat will be better tomorrow. See you then. To the point.